In this video, we'll be introducing some of the anatomy of the digestive system. First, we'll start with the digestive tract, also known as the gastrointestinal tract or just the GI tract, and sometimes called the alimentary canal. This is the pathway that food takes as it moves through your body, from ingestion up here in the mouth, through the pharynx, esophagus, to the stomach, small intestine, into the large intestine, and out the anus. The total amount of time a piece of food spends in the GI tract varies depending on your health conditions and what food it is and what else you ate with that food. But it's usually between 24 and 72 hours, so about 1 to 3 days. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to get through the stomach and small intestine, and elimination at the anus usually begins after about 24 hours. But it's important to mention that food doesn't move through in one continuous lump. You may have parts of a meal entering the colon while some other parts are still in the stomach. This pathway is sometimes referred to as a disassembly line. You're probably familiar with the term assembly line, like in a car plant where different pieces are added and stuck together in order to build a car. Referring to the GI tract as a disassembly line reflects one of the major functions of the GI tract, which is digestion. And that's basically breaking the food that you eat apart into small molecules that can be taken up by your body and actually used by your cells. Digestion begins right away as soon as you take a bite of food. There are enzymes in your saliva that start digestion, and chewing is part of digestion as well. Continues in your stomach, where it's primarily proteins that are digested. And digestion essentially finishes in the small intestine. The small intestine is also where these nutrients that have been formed from your food by digestion, this is where they're absorbed into the blood. In your large intestine, you have water being reabsorbed, hopefully leading to a more compact, more solid fecal waste. You also have bacteria in your large intestine that do a little bit of digestion of the molecules that your own enzymes can't act on. And then the rectum is sort of your storage for waste, and the anus is where that waste exits the body. Along the way through the GI tract, you have circular muscles that separate off different regions of the GI tract, and these are called sphincters. Sphincters serve a couple of different purposes. The first purpose is that it keeps food moving forward, so you don't want food moving backwards through the digestive tract, so sphincters close behind food so that it's only moved forward. Sphincters also can be controlled in order to control the movement of food forward. So particularly between the stomach and the small intestine, the stomach can hold a lot more food than the small intestine can process. So the sphincter between the stomach and the small intestine, the pyloric sphincter, is only open for very small, short moments, allowing little bursts of food product, partially digested food product, to leave the stomach and enter into the small intestine. The pyloric sphincter is one of the sphincters. You also have a sphincter at the upper region of the esophagus, and at the lower end of the esophagus you have the gastroesophageal sphincter. If you've ever had acid reflux, or you know someone that gets acid reflux, or someone that has GERD, G-E-R-D, that's gastroesophageal reflux disease, that occurs when your gastroesophageal sphincter does not close fully, and you get a little bit of the acid from the stomach refluxing back up into the esophagus. It causes a sensation of heartburn, and over time, chronic GERD can lead to damage to the esophagus and cancerous changes to the esophagus. The pyloric sphincter is between the stomach and the small intestine. And then the ileocecal valve is a sphincter between the small intestine and the large intestine. The ileum is the last region of the small intestine, and the cecum is the first region of the large intestine. That's why this is called the ileocecal valve. Your anus is actually a sphincter muscles too. It's actually two sphincter muscles. There's an internal sphincter at the anus that is involuntary, and it's stimulated to relax by a spinal cord reflex that's triggered by the feces in the rectum. The external sphincter is under voluntary control. That's actually skeletal muscle, so you can consciously control opening and closing of that external sphincter. That's part of what you learn in potty training. So the GI tract is the disassembly line that food actually passes through, but there are also a few important organs that are very critical to the function of the digestive tract, even though food does not actually pass through them. The main accessory organs of the GI tract are the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. All of these organs produce and secrete products that aid digestion. The liver produces bile to aid in the digestion of fats. The gallbladder takes that bile from the liver, stores it and concentrates it, and then releases that bile into the duodenum, the first region of the small intestine. So the gallbladder doesn't actually produce the bile, it just stores and concentrates it. The pancreas produces enzymes that digest all forms of food, and then releases those enzymes into the same spot. In this case, we're talking about the exocrine function of the pancreas. We talked about the endocrine function, secreting insulin and glucagon and keeping blood glucose levels in balance. But the exocrine function of the pancreas is to produce these digestive enzymes. Bile and the pancreatic juices are all released at a spot called the hepatopancreatic ampulla, right in this C curve of the small intestine. There are also accessory structures specific to the mouth. Teeth are important. They help with the mechanical breakdown of food, the chewing, breaking food into small particles, better for passage through the digestive tract and better for access to the digestive enzymes. The tongue manipulates food, and that manipulation serves a couple of different purposes. First off, it mixes the food with saliva so that the enzymes in the saliva can start acting on that food. And the tongue moves food to the back of the mouth. I dare you, the next time you're eating, to try to swallow without using your tongue. But don't try too hard because I don't want anyone to choke. The other accessory structures that are around the mouth are the salivary glands. And the salivary glands, of course, produce saliva. Saliva moistens and compacts food. It also dissolves molecules so that you can taste them. People that have dry mouths that don't make enough saliva often complain of food tasting funny because they can't taste as well if it's not moist. Saliva also contains enzymes that begin the chemical digestion of food. Now, most of the organs of the digestive system are located in the abdominal cavity, everything below the esophagus pretty much. So your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestine, your rectum, your liver, your pancreas, your gallbladder, they're all in the abdominal cavity. And most of the organs in the abdominal cavity are surrounded by a serous membrane known as the peritoneum. Like all serous membranes in your body, so think of the pleura around the lungs, think of the pericardium around the heart, the peritoneum is a two-walled structure. So you have the visceral peritoneum, which covers the surface of most of the digestive organs, and that visceral peritoneum kind of folds over to form the parietal peritoneum, which lines the wall of the abdominopelvic cavity. And in between these two walls, these two layers, you have serous fluid. So that's just a lubricating fluid that allows the organs of the abdominal pelvic cavity to kind of move along each other and contract, and without causing friction or without causing pain. So the serous-filled cavity in the abdomen is referred to as the peritoneal cavity. There are some organs in the abdominal cavity which are retroperitoneal. Retroperitoneal just means that they're located behind the peritoneum. So only the anterior face of the organ is covered by peritoneum. The rest of the organ is actually located behind it. The kidneys are retroperitoneal. The first part of the small intestine, the duodenum, is peritoneal. And most of the pancreas is also peritoneal, retroperitoneal. Excuse me. What you're looking at here is just sort of a rough cartoon-like schematic of the peritoneum. You have the visceral peritoneum there wrapped around the organ, parietal peritoneum there along with the wall. Retroperitoneal organs would be located in here. The schematic also shows that you have folds of peritoneum called mesenteries. Mesentery is the singular form, mesenteries, IES, is the plural form. A mesentery is basically a double fold of the peritoneum. It provides a route for blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves to reach the digestive organs. It also helps hold the organs in place and keeps them from getting tangled up as you move around. Some mesenteries fuse to the body wall, helping hold the organs in place. There is a large mesentery called the greater omentum that hangs over the anterior face of the abdominal cavity like an apron. In this diagram here, where you're taking an anterior view, the greater omentum has been cut away to show the mesenteries below. But if you look on here, the sagittal view, you can see the greater omentum folding like that. Along with the greater omentum, there's also a lesser omentum between the liver and stomach. The mesentery proper around the small intestine, you can see it kind of wrapping around there. And the transverse mesocolon and sigmoid mesocolon around the large intestine. Okay, after studying this video, which is just an introduction to the anatomy of the digestive tract, you should be able to identify the organs of the alimentary canal and the accessory digestive organs, including those of the mouth. Trace the path a particle of food takes through the digestive tract, talk about the sphincters, talk about the peritoneum and the mesenteries. Both what are they and what function do they serve?